Imagine that you wanted to start a business or a new trend or some political action, some movement, and you wanted to get people to join your movement. I think one of the things that you would do is that you would probably emphasize the benefits to people, right? You would say, hey, join my political idea or sign my pledge or buy my business product because it will make your life better, right? It will bring you more comfort or more joy or more peace or whatever. But that's generally how we try and get people on our side. And what's really interesting is that the greatest movement leaders throughout history oftentimes did the opposite. Jesus of Nazareth not only said to his disciples, his followers, these are the benefits of believing in me and the things that I am teaching, but he oftentimes also said to them that believing in me comes with a cost. And that cost oftentimes involves something that people generally don't like to talk about, and that's this word suffering. At one stage, Jesus said the following. He said to his friends, to his disciples, I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat is planted in the soil and dies, it remains alone. But its death will produce many new kernels, many new seeds, a plentiful harvest. Now, Jesus is saying something a little bit cryptic here, but he's actually using an agricultural principle to say that a seed that dies produces a harvest and multiplies itself. And Jesus here was talking about himself, about his own life. He was saying that soon he would be crucified and that his death would be the spark that ignites the fire that was early Christianity. But Jesus also said that the things that happened to him, the suffering that he experiences, his followers would later also experience. And one of the ways that we really see this verse especially played out is in church history. This was very interesting for me when I first discovered it. But one of the main reasons that historians today believe the early Christian church grew so tremendously. I mean, they started out with 1 or 12 or maybe 100 people, and within 3 centuries, almost 2% of the Roman Empire at that stage, which was more than 1 million people, were Christians. And so people say, well, this is strange. How did it grow so fast from this obscure little group? And church historians today say, well, one of the reasons it grew so fast was because of plagues. Because the first 3 centuries in the Roman Empire, there were oftentimes plagues, oftentimes drastic plagues that really decimated the population and killed up to 1/3 of the population at a time. And the reaction of Christians in this time was tremendous. Oftentimes, the Romans themselves, the non-Christians, including their leaders, would abandon sick people because the plague was very contagious. When they discovered that one person in the house was sick, oftentimes friends and family and people close to them would totally abandon them and move away and run away to preserve their own lives. And during this time, the Christians were then the ones, this tiny small percent of the population would go to these sick people, move in their houses and take care of them. And this was a tremendous witness to the ancient world, to the power of the teachings of Jesus. Now, when I first heard this story about the early Christians going and serving and tending the sick, I thought this was tremendous. This is so selfless of them. They're really living out what Jesus said here. What I did not like about this story very much, that was also true, is that the Christians who went to serve these sick people oftentimes got sick themselves. And there are many cases where the Christians died in the stead of the people that they were looking after. And when I first heard about this in university, I was about 21 years old, and at that stage it didn't really gel very well with my theology, with what I believed. At this stage, I kind of had this idea that Christians shouldn't get sick, right? That we should have always divine health. And that's why it's really good to look at church history, to confront some of your own biases and some of your own ideas. Jesus said, unless a kernel of wheat is planted in the soil and dies, it remains alone. But its death will produce many new kernels. And what this means and how the first Christians lived this out is that through self-sacrificial love and care for undeserving people, oftentimes is a tremendous testimony to everyone around you. That is a much greater testimony to all of the blessings that God gives you, but the fact that you self-sacrificially care for undeserving people, because that's exactly what your master Jesus did. What does this mean for us today? It does not mean, I think, that we should actively seek to suffer and to get sick. Absolutely not. We should not be reckless with our own health. But it does mean we have a choice. Today, here in Europe, maybe in the midst of the coronavirus outbreak, if you're watching this at around this time, you have a choice. We all have a choice. I have a choice between selfishness and sacrifice, between denial and acceptance, between hoarding and preparedness, and between fear and faith. And Christians are not people of fear. We are people of faith. We can and we should pray for safety and for supernatural healing. The Bible commands it. And at the same time, we should be willing to serve those who are undeserving, those who need it most, because this is a tremendous testimony to the world around us, to the power of Jesus.